Okay, so we've just clocked onto the hour. I want to thank everyone for joining us for this 45 minutes on session on the public dashboard. I'm Fiona Solomon, the CEO of ASI. Bit of a surprise host today, but joining me are also Cam, our assurance director, and Tiani and Carolyn from our Elemental team. So this session's really all about our public dashboard on Elemental, and Elemental, of course, is our online assurance platform. It governs member, auditor, and secretariat workflows and the associated data management for the whole ASI certification process. We launched our public dashboard in September last year, and we've now got nearly 1,400 users who have access to this platform. Basically, it provides database level access to information that we have in ASI certifications and that we previously published only as PDFs. And we really see and saw, and led to us developing this, a lot of increasing interest from stakeholders to be able to download, analyse, aggregate data across the now nearly 160 ASI certifications through the aluminium value chain, and that are across more than 40 countries. So if you're interested from what you see today, definitely create an account for yourself to get access. It's open to anyone who is interested to do so. We do have a short overview video on the website, a few minutes to show some of the basic functionalities, but in this session, we want to show a longer introduction to the dashboard. We've actually pre-recorded it because we had some internet access issues from one of our colleagues, but that will leave us about 25 minutes for interactive questions and discussion. If you want to post a question to us, please open the Q&A window down the bottom, type in your question there and click send, and you can of course ask it anonymously if you prefer. And you can post questions as we go along, so you don't need to wait for the discussion time to start. So please, as something occurs to you, do share it with us. Okay, so we're going to watch our orientation that's been prepared by Carolyn, our Elemental manager, and my colleague Tianyi is going to click the go button on that for us. Thanks, Tianyi.
Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Carolyn and I am ASI's Elemental Manager. Thank you for joining us. The public dashboard is there for you to access all the certification information that is included in the summary audit report for every ASI certification issued. The summary audit report, which I'm sure you've all seen, but I have one up here just in case you haven't, has always been available on the ASI website, but as a PDF, this is limited in what you can do with this information. The public dashboard allows you to access this information easily, and where you can see all the certification data, a pre-prepared subset, or a subset of data that you can filter yourselves. You can also download the data and open this in Excel or the spreadsheet software of your choice to do further analysis of your own choosing. Looking at the summary audit report for the Rio Tinto Aluminium Division Certification 2, you can see that this first section relates to the certification. So we have this first page, which is a summary. Oops, sorry, scrolled a bit too quick then. Page 2, which has more detailed information such as the member name, entity name, certification scope, supply chain activities. I won't go through them all because it's quite boring. Here we go, we'll page down, so this is all that sort of information. And then we actually get to the second part, which is a summary of findings for each criteria in the standard. Therefore, in the public dashboard, there are two sets of certification data available. The first data set is information on the certification itself. For example, the ASI member who holds the certification dates, entity name, and certification scope, name a few. This data in the public dashboard also holds information in the summary audit report, but in a more searchable form. For example, the country location of sites included in the certification. The pages that display this information include a multi-pointed star at the beginning. So you can see that here with the performance standard and chain of custody standard certifications, if you want to search for both certifications. And under performance standard certifications, we have these 4 here. And then we have the equivalent for the chain of custody as well. The second set of data relates to each applicable criterion in each standard based on the supply chain activities included in the entity certification scope. This includes the criteria number, the performance rating, and the comment or public headline statement, as you can see here. The pages that display this information have a little reporting icon at the beginning. So you can see there's 3 here for the performance standard, and we call them performance standard records. And then if we go across to the chain of custody, we have 3 here as well for the equivalent chain of custody standard records. Now, there are various entry points into the certifications depending on how you wish to access the data. If you wish to look at the certifications for both standards, then you click on this one, the performance standard and chain of custody standard certifications. If you wish to only look at certifications issued for the performance standard or the chain of custody standard, then you move across to the top level menu and select one of these options here. So to purposes of this demonstration, we're going to select the performance standard certifications. But the functionality is equivalent in the chain of custody, and that applies across both data sets. By default, these certification pages display the current certification. So this is the latest revision or version of a certification. If you wish to see all certifications, including all revisions, you just click on the All Certifications tab here. But just for the moment, I'll go back to the current certifications just so we have a smaller data set. Now, if you scroll across the table, you'll see that you can see the same information here that appears in the summary audit report, but with including the countries column. And if we scroll a little bit further across, we have some extra ones as well. So, for example, the current certification, which just indicates whether it is if it's yes or no. A certification certificate number and a revision number. And this allows for easier filtering and for easier sorting if you download the data and look at it in a spreadsheet program. You can filter this data by clicking on the Add Filters button. So I'm going to search for the Rio Tinto Aluminium Division Certificate 2. So I can just type in part of the member name and it will show me those matches. And then I just get the current certifications for Rio Tinto Aluminium Division. So if I click on this particular, the 2 Rev 3, because that's the current version of this certification, it will show me the elemental version of that summary audit report. There is a little problem here with the text not being the right font, but I believe that's just me. So I have to actually haven't looked at why that is yet. So if I just scroll down, it's basically the same as what you saw on the PDF on the website, but just formatted in a web page. And then we have the summary of findings, which you can also export if you wish. And if I page down, at the very bottom, we have the document control and version history, which I didn't show you in the PDF earlier, but is there. We've also made these clickable links. So if you wanted to go and look at an earlier certification revision, you can just click on that and that link will be, and that revision 1 would be displayed. If I go back to the current certifications. You can also click on the View PDF link, and that will just take you to the summary audit report on the ASI website. Now you can also view this data by supply chain activities. So I'll just go back up to the top menu, and this is this second option here. When you open that, you'll see a graph of the certifications by inclusion of supply chain activities in the certification scope. So obviously, if a certification was to include more than one supply chain activities, which of course many do, they will be counted multiple times. So they will appear in each of these. So if I click on the bauxite mining tab, we will just see those certifications that include bauxite mining. Just scroll down. And you can see some there. And then you can just click across to each of the different supply chain activities. Now the same applies to we've also provided this data by country. So if you click back up to the main menu, select the by country option. Once again, we'll have a graph with the countries included in the certification scope. And then we have the tabs for all the countries. So just to play favorites, because I'm based in Australia, I'm going to select Australia. And then we'll see all those certifications that include sites in Australia. Now, once again, I didn't mention earlier, but there's a little search option which will search for anything that appears in the table. And there's also the Add Filters button. Go back up to the main menu once again. Now, the fourth option for this certifications data is the search option. So this gives you the ability to search for lots of different fields, and really the choices are pretty much endless. But the example I'm going to show you today is what if you wanted to search for all current certifications that were issued in our first year that the standard was valid. So or the standard was implemented. So I can go, if the date of issue is before the 12th month, because it's US dates in the search fields, 16/2019. I will say wherever we use a date in an actual field, we always just try to use a full date. So that uses the actual name of the month. So you can see here, November 8th, 2021, just to try to avoid that confusion, because obviously around the world, we handle our dates differently. But when you're actually using it in an actual search field or in a filter field, it will be a US style date, which is of course month, day, year. I'm going to select for the current certification just so I get the most recent revision. I hit search. So sorts of things you can search for is you can search for particular countries, you could search for auditing firms and combinations of different things. And of course, if you don't want to do it using the public dashboard, you can also just download the data and do those in your spreadsheet software program of choice. Okay, and now we have our list of results for certifications that were issued prior to December 16th in 2019. Now, the other item I will show you, but I'll go back to the performance standard certifications, is just quickly the export functionality. I will point you to an FAQ a little bit later, which gives you the instructions on exporting. But you will see this little export button on all of the pages. When you actually click it, it will come up and show you the formats that you can actually export into. We recommend using the commas or the CSV file because this will export into your spreadsheet software. So you actually just click on that. It will go off, get that information, and then download it as a CSV file for you. You could also download as a tabs file. However, this doesn't work so much or doesn't work very well due to the line breaks. And there's also a JSON for those who are a bit more computer programming orientated. But I will discuss that a bit more later. Now we'll move on to the second set of data. Go back up to the home page and then select the performance standard records by criteria. The second set of data, the criteria records, are the audit findings for the criteria in the standard, as you see in the summary of findings table in the summary audit report. In the records displayed here, you can see the criteria number, the conformance rating, and the comment or public headline statement, as you see in the summary of findings table. We also include the certification information, as well as some additional columns, if we just scroll across, which is principal, criteria, and sub-criteria to allow for easier filtering and sorting. This page, the ASI Performance Records by Criteria, includes all criteria records that are applicable for the supply chain activities included in the certification. For example, Criterion 3.3b only applies to certifications that include bauxite mining. If I filter on Criterion 3.3b, you will see that there are fewer records returned, as there are only a few certifications that include bauxite mining and therefore audit this criterion. By default, the filter for these pages is set to the current certifications. You may have noticed, if you were observant enough, that when we first entered the page, this actually said current certification is true, but you can see now it's changed to yes. This is a small bug in our software, which we're waiting to be fixed by our software provider. But as soon as you click on the filter, as I just did, it returns to the proper value of yes. But the functionality is the same. To view all criteria records for a specific principle, you can select the performance standard records by principle page. This page defaults to Principle 1, Business Integrity, and then you can select one of the other tabs here to view the criteria records for a different principle. When you apply filters to one of the principle pages, it will only apply to the criteria records for the principle selected. You can also see the performance records by conformance rating. If I go back up to the top menu, and then select Performance Standard Records by Conformance Rating. This will display records for each conformance rating. By default, it displays the conformance, but you just click on one of these other tabs. So if you'd like to see the minor non-conformances, you just click on that tab, and that's the criteria records that will be displayed. Once again, when you apply a filter to one of these conformance rating pages, it will only apply to the criteria records with the conformance rating selected. You can also see the conformance rating, the criteria records by conformance ratings as a graph. So once again, if we go back up to the top level and just select this last option here, Performance Standard Records Conformance Rating Graphs. The first page will show the criteria conformance rating graphs for all criteria records by principle, and the first two graphs will show for all principles. So you can see here, this one shows current certifications, this one shows all certifications. If you scroll down, there's a graph for each principle. So if we look down at material stewardship, you can see once again, there's a little toggle here. This will show the current certifications, and then you can toggle that across to all certifications, and that graph will update to be all certifications. You can also select a pie segment in the graph to display the criteria records for this segment. So for example, if I was to select the minor non-conformances, it will then show me all the criteria records that are used or that make up that segment. Now briefly, so there's still enough time for our Q&A session, we also have an FAQ page. We just go back up to the top level. Which is just here. Now the very last FAQ here, and we don't have many yet, can I download raw data, explains the use, how you can use this data, the export process, and also how to replace the HTML line breaks in the data, which is how a line break on a web page is displayed, and how to replace that with a standard line break. So that's this one here. We also have a help desk. I'm not going to click on the help desk ticket, the help desk tab, because this demonstration user is both a public user and a member, or has a member account as well. If I click the help desk, it will actually click across into the member dashboard. But this particular page will let you add a support ticket and also see any replies that we make. If you have an auditor, or if you are an auditor, so you'll have access to the public dashboard and the auditor dashboard. Once again, the help desk tab will take you across to the auditor. So they're all the audit dashboard, so they're all kept in the same place for you. As just a public user, it just puts you into the actual page here. We also have some informational pages over here about the public dashboard. Some of these still need to be completed, but we'll do that soon. I hope that this demonstration has been useful and helped you become more familiar with the public dashboard. There's certainly lots of information that I'm sure people will be very keen to look at and analyse, and we look forward to you doing that. Thank you very much for your time.
Terrific. Thank you, Carolyn, for preparing that for us, which just gives us a bit of an overview. But as you can see, there's heaps in there and heaps of ways that we've tried to present some pre-cooked ways to interrogate the data, but also the ability to download it and look into it yourself. We did have some pre-submitted questions, so we might start with a few of those and then dig into the Q&A questions that have started to come through. So do continue to kind of put those questions in there, and we'll get to as many as we can.
Yeah, look, Fiona, the first one I've got here on my list, and I can direct this one to you. Look, how does the public dashboard capture sustainability performance data?
Yes. So at the moment, as Carolyn was just showing, the dashboard really captures that information that's published in certificates. So the conformance ratings for individual criteria, the auditor's findings, so some detail about how the entity is performing against the standards requirements, and the view and the evidence and so on that the auditor pulled together to reach that finding. It also includes links to published information on performance where we require certain disclosures under the standard. So that can include things like biodiversity plans, greenhouse gas emissions, links to general sustainability reports, and so on. And so that's the information that's gathered currently through the certification progress. In ASI, we are increasing our focus this year on data and research as a whole stream within our broader strategy. And we're thinking hard about the data needs that different stakeholders have to inform their own decision making, whether that's for procurement or for investment, and so on. And then how we can further embed this in the certification process in future and other data collection or aggregation processes over time. So the public dashboard for us is a really good start. It leverages the database that we've set up to manage the certification process, but we are consciously looking at how else we need to support the disclosure, the transparency interests that we all have in understanding and driving performance improvement. So the second question that I've got here is a practical one, Cam, and in the assurance area, how do members get informed, for example, that the certificate is running out, is coming to its expiry, and that they need to recertify?
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. Look, the Secretariat actually do not inform members that their certification period is about to expire. They've actually got that information very clearly presented at the front part of their certificate and in the audit report. So it's presented there on their certificate, and of course, it's also there here on the public dashboard. So if you're a member with multiple sites, multiple certifications, you could just search or sort based on your member name. And then up will come this certification expiry dates towards the right-hand side of the scroll down boxes there. So look, we don't inform them, and look, at this stage, there hasn't really been any issues to date at all. That both members and also their auditors are very good in tracking these expiry dates. So we haven't had any issues to date. And as I said, there's those two methods where that date is quite clear. For those members who are not yet certified, and this is a little bit off topic, but for those members who aren't yet certified, our Director of Memberships typically will send them a reminder several months beforehand in terms of the 2-year period for certain membership classes to get one entity certified to the performance standard. So that's done a little bit separately.
Thanks, Cam. And we also, through our Secretariat dashboard, can see where members are at. Have they logged in? Have they started a self-assessment? Is an audit sort of process started? So we can get a sense of timeframes for those that are getting closer to that 2-year timeframe from joining. But yeah, thanks, Cam. That's great.
Yeah, here's one for you here, Fiona. Look, does the public dashboard provide data on how much secondary aluminium is used by certified companies?
Yeah, so we don't publish individual data, company level data on aluminium production or sourcing, and that's out of respect for commercial and confidence considerations as well as competition law. We're a membership-based organisation, so we have an antitrust compliance policy. So publishing data relating to production, sales, and so on is a very significant area which we take a lot of concern around. We do, however, publish aggregate data on chain of custody material flows, and that includes secondary aluminium, and that's visualised in this really great global mass flow diagram that was developed through the International Aluminium Institute, and we overlay our COC material data into that in the form of a green stripe. So that's available on our website and has data so far for the 2019 and 2020 calendar years. And we're just about to start collecting 2021 data and look to be publishing that in the coming months. If you go in and find that on our website, it's under, I think, chain of custody material flows. You'll see that the stronger uptake that we've had so far is in primary production. So for example, 14% of our global bauxite production was ASI certified in 2020. That was about double the year before. And then we see that get smaller, maybe halve through each subsequent supply chain as you move through refining, smelting, semi-fabrication, and so on. And so as you see that kind of diminishing, because it's sort of starting, if you like, with the supply chain filling up first from the primary end, those secondary flows, so that pre and post-consumer dimensions of that, under the both performance standard and chain of custody standard with ASI are still small, and we hope to see that grow in this year's data. The chain of custody piece, of course, does not necessarily represent how much secondary aluminium is used by certified companies, but we increasingly, of course, want to kind of, we'll be able to see that where the performance standard applies and where chain of custody is being used to kind of track and pass on claims around those flows.
Thanks, Fiona. Look, a question that's come through live in today's session from Winfried is about how can we find out which specific sites within a larger multi-site company are covered by a certificate? Well, this can be done two ways, and actually is a little bit, it correlates to my question, my answer to an earlier question. Firstly, you can search the actual certificate. So for those multi-site certifications, you can look at the certification scope, and sometimes the audit scope, particularly for a first audit, will also reference the specific sites in that certification scope. The other way of doing it is using the search function in the public dashboard. So it is relevant to today's session in terms of the dashboard. There is a free text field, but there may be an element of trial and error there if you don't know the specific name of the facility you are searching for. So I don't know, for argument's sake, if it's company XYZ and you think that they've got an operation called Alloyville or Ingots Land or something, that you could type that name into the free text and see if that comes up. So there's two ways of doing it, but I think my preferred option would be go to the certificate and then look at the certification scope, and it should give the name of the facility, the region and or country it's located in.
Great.
I've got a question here for, sorry Fiona, go for it.
I think we're going to ask the same one. You go.
Look, it's a question for Carolyn too, if her internet's all still up and running.
It's good.
In the future, good, loud and clear. In the future, will there be improved export options? Because at the moment, there's the ability to export, I think, in 3 different file formats. The most common or obvious one would be the CSV format. So you can then import it straight into Excel and start manipulating and working with the data on an Excel worksheet. The comment made in the question is, the data comes in very raw, it needs a fair bit of work and manipulation and tidy up before users are able to generate graphs and charts and make it digestible. So could there be an option down the track to make exportable data out of the dashboard a little bit more user-friendly, maybe a little bit more Excel-friendly, etc.?
Okay, so the options we have to export are actually just provided by the software that we use. So we actually can't change any of those options. However, I would like to say that what you see in the table is what you will have in the downloaded file. So there's a little FRQ to get rid of the HTML line breaks, as I mentioned in the presentation, but pretty much everything else is just exactly what you see in the table. So I guess if you have a specific question, you can send us a question in the help desk and we can help you interpret the file a little bit more. But I don't know that it's as confusing as maybe you think it is.
Thanks, Carolyn. And we've got a question too about how does ASI verify CO2 emissions at smelters? What data do you request from the smelter to verify that it's credible?
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. Look, I have to be pretty honest and blunt up front. The verification of CO2 emissions data is we do not do that. That's not our role to do that as such. And actually, nor is it the auditor's role at this stage. And the revision of the performance standard that's coming up will have a requirement for all certified members to have that verification done by an independent third party. But look, I'm jumping the gun there. That is a future requirement for the performance standard moving forward. But at the moment, the ASI Secretariat, in its oversight assessment of audits that we receive, we do not verify those emissions data. That's not to say we do not look at them and do a reality check. That is something we do as part of the oversight process, in particular, those that have a material or a significant level of emissions, i.e. smelters, and some of those larger multi-site certifications. We have access to a CRU emissions analysis tool that gives us, it's a subscription-based tool that ASI is a member or a subscriber of, and we can access that, and is very comprehensive, broad emissions data for most upstream aluminium assets across the globe. So we can use that as a bit of a reality check. And then during the oversight process, as most of you should be aware, a link to a public sustainability report that contain those GHG, those greenhouse gas emissions data, is available. So during our oversight, we will look at those sustainability reports, have a look at the overall data, and again, run the ruler over it with respect to just providing a general reality check. Now, there are times where we have gone back to auditors and said, look, these numbers don't quite stack up based on the supply chain activities. Can you review, can you check? And invariably, those issues are sorted. But that's the level of, if you can call it verification, but I'd probably more call it just a reality check. That's the level that we do. But back to my earlier point, the verification piece on CO2 emissions will be greatly strengthened through Principle 5 of the updated performance standard that will be due out in a few months from now. So that's where that verification piece will be strengthened at the members' end.
Great, thanks, Cam. I've got a question about the revision history, Carolyn. You kind of talked about how you can click back and look at the history of the certification. We might be up to revision 3 or 4 with some of these. Carolyn and Cam, can you give us a bit of insight about why that's relevant and important, perhaps in terms of change over time and so on?
I might leave Cam to answer that one as more of an assurance question.
Not a problem, Karen. I was actually looking for my unmute button, so that's why I wasn't leaving you in the lurch there. I was ready to answer that one. I found my button, and here we go. Look, there are a number of reasons that revisions can be issued. You will see revisions whenever there is a surveillance audit completed, whenever there's a scope change audit completed, but sometimes through some data checking. And Carolyn actually in particular was quite busy last year doing a cross-check of raw audit data versus the final reports that were issued. And look, very rarely, occasionally there is a discrepancy in a date or a name, or maybe the certification scope, going back to Winfried's question earlier, maybe the certification scope could have been clearer. And therefore we've gone back to the auditor and the member and said, look, your certification scope's growing. We want to make sure that it is very clear to all stakeholders what's incorporated. So sometimes we've gone back and just clarified some information that's provided there. Sometimes there might be a typographical error that's just sort of crept through, and we've done a little bit of a tidy up there. So they're generally what the revision types that happen. But the majority of revisions, I would say 90% of them, relate to either a surveillance audit or a scope change audit, and the last 10% are just sort of errors or improvements to the report. And rather than just do that blindly, for the sake of transparency and openness, we've issued it as a revision.
Great, thanks, Cam. And I think related to that, what we can also see over time with successive certifications is the closing out, ideally, of non-conformances, and therefore, the kind of change that we're looking to achieve. So this is a bit of a question without notice, but I remember last year we did an insights article looking at closing out of non-conformances successively. And Carolyn, I wonder if we might have the data at our fingertips, but some of maybe the insights that you recall, or from the back end, the process of enabling, these kinds of analysis to be done.
That's a good question. I can't remember the numbers in the end. But you can actually do that via the public dashboard, as in everybody can do it. We do have a column in there, and I'll apologise because I can't pop up the live site. But maybe actually Tiani could pop up the public dashboard for us.
Perfect. Yes.
And I'll just talk him through it. It's my internet connection that isn't been working for a couple of days. So I'm running off my phone data and it's a bit slow. So I'm the cause for all the changes. So if you go across to the performance standard certifications and click on the performance standard records by criteria, that would be the one to click. So we actually have a column in there, which is conformance rating from the previous audit. So obviously if it's an initial audit, there won't actually be. You can just see it just on the right there, about fourth column from the right. Most cases it's blank because that's probably been for an initial audit, or if it's been for a scope change, then it will be actually. But actually, Tiana, could you just filter? If you can go up and change the filter, remove the current certification is true filter, and just change it to sorry, because I've lost that. Conformance rating, performance, previous audit, if different, just do is not blank, because that will just show you all the examples where the performance rating has changed from one certification to the previous certification. And this is working on all the records. So there's probably might be a few on. Here's 179. So you can see here for this very first case, there was initially for 1.1, there was a minor non-conformance in the previous audit. So that would have been for certification 67. The one that's shown here now is 67 Rev 1. And now that's been upgraded to a conformance. So you can actually look at this information yourself and just see what criteria has changed from one version or one revision to the next one. So you can see there's quite a few that have been closed off. And then you could do specific ones if you wanted to search for major non-conformance that have been closed and things like that. But that gives you a pretty good example of how you can look for that information yourself, and you can see differences. So then if you wanted to go and look at what the comment or the public headline statement was in certification 67, then you'll need to go and look at that particular one. We haven't got a mechanism to do it from this page, but you have the information that you can see there. I think that covers it off.
Yeah, that's great, Carolyn. So effectively, this gives you a sort of a change log that's transparent. So if somebody's wanting to understand how an entity or a site has improved practices over time, then this gives a window into that.
Yes, that is correct.
Excellent. And when you and Tiani were putting together the public dashboard, you know, I can remember some of the discussions because it has a lot of power, as I think has been demonstrated through just that little showing, and also through your presentation. You know, there's many filters, and so we've tried to prepare some, and then also have the flexibility to you know, create your own recipe for what you're looking for. Are there other things you know, that you might be thinking of in terms of adding as functionality, or that you think people increasingly might get interested in?
That's a good question, and not one I can think of off the top of my head. I was going to say just generally, because you can go in and have a look at, if you look into the certifications page, you'll be able to see which audits have actually changed over time as well. So you could have a look at what audits by searching on the audit type. You could search on surveillance audit or scope change or recertifications. You can see what each certification is up to in the process. Whether it's been a first certification or they've already done 3 years and they've been recertified. As for new functionality, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's lots of things in there. And we are, yes, I just can't think of anything right now.
No, that's okay. Maybe another good example is to have a look at some provisional certifications, some of which are issued because of the level of non-conformances, and others which are issued particularly in the COVID situation that we've had over the last couple of years, and we haven't been able to have site access in certain circumstances. We can only issue a provisional certification. And we're starting to see some of those graduate, if you like, up to a full certification once that you know, site access is able to be done. Can you show us anything about having a look at provisionals, or looking at ones that had kind of the COVID policy applying?
That's okay. So the first place to look is where Tiani's already gone. So if you click on the performance standard certifications, and then we're just going to put the filter, change the filter. And if I just get my right one, so we just want to look for certification level. And we just look for provisional. And this will show us all the certifications that received a provisional certification, the majority of which have been due to the COVID pandemic. So if we scroll across and have a look, scroll across to the right just a little bit, there's a little force majeure column right at the very end. Oh, there we go. And you can see down the bottom there, so you have some that have that completed. So they were audits that would have been completed remotely. Though looking at some of the others, I think there might be an issue with the data there. So I will make that as a note in my notebook, and I will make sure I will check that tomorrow, because some of those other ones at the top should have also have been flagged as COVID audits, and it doesn't look like the flag got carried through. So my apologies for those ones. And now the second part you can look at is if we go back up to the top again, and we can go across to the records, sorry, all the way up to the menu. Nothing like having somebody being the backseat driver on a website. Click on performance standard certifications and then go back to the conformance rating. So performance standard records by conformance rating. As part of the provisions that we put in place to handle the COVID pandemic, we added a new conformance rating, which is unable to rate. So if we can click that conformance rating on the right-hand side at the top. No, not the filter, just the conformance, just the tab at the top. Scroll up to the top, or not. No, up at the very top of the screen, there's an unable to rate tab.
Oh, yes.
There we go. And it's also a delay.
Driving.
Now you can see all the criteria that weren't able to be audited completely or to satisfaction to the standard. So I'll have a little comment in there to say that majority of them, we could check the records, but because we couldn't go onto site, we couldn't assess this properly. So this would be assessed during the next on-site audit, in which case, if the unable to rate can be rated, then they'd move up to a conformance, a full certification.
Great. And if somebody has a question about how to use their public dashboard, they have access to the help desk within their account?
That's correct, yes. So they can just pop in a little support ticket if you have a question on a field and you're not sure what it means, or if you find an error, just like I just did then, feel free to let us know and we'll get it fixed for you and we'll answer your question as well. So as I commented in the little video, if you're a member or an auditor, when you hit that help desk tab, it will take you back across to the member or auditor dashboard so that all the help desk tickets for you are in the one spot. But if you were just a public user, then it will just open a support ticket page there. And you can view the ones you've submitted and you can add one as well. And we will send you an email when we answer it.
That's excellent. And I guess, but part of that too, if there's any requests or features that we can consider within the broader development schedule that we've got, we certainly welcome those as well. We're going to be doing quite a lot of work in Elemental in preparation for the integration of the new standards that are under development that we hope to launch in May this year. So that will be another filter and feature when it comes to searching, where you'll be able to look at, well, is this against the old standards or the new standards? And of course, there's a lot of back-end work that we need to do to support that kind of transition of certifications from one to another. So in the next few months, we'll be doing some detailed in-house work to look at how that will work smoothly for both members and auditors. So Huge thanks to Cam and Carolyn and Tianyi for bringing this all together tonight with some complicated IT connection issues on our side. And we also apologise that we've had to postpone this session a couple of times because of other unrelated kind of issues that have come up for the team as well. So it's really satisfying to have got that done tonight. So it's pretty much our 45 minutes. I want to thank everybody for participating in this session. We are going to make the recording available in the coming days. And I'll just put in a little note for our next session on the 22nd of March, which is going to be on modern slavery, presented by Neil Wilkins from the Institute for Human Rights and Business, who's a member of our Standards Committee, and you'll find details in this month's member update. So thanks again, everyone, and wishing you the best of day ahead. Thank you.